I want to thank my dear friend Charlie Kirk. Charlie, thanks for everything that you've done. But unfortunately for all of you, strap yourselves in, because I've got the microphone. I'm going to say whatever the hell I want to for the next 30 minutes. Now, I know the theme, of course, is about statesmanship. A 33-year-old communist running an insurgent campaign beat a multi-million-dollar establishment machine politician in the New York Democratic mayoral primary. Now, I don't want to harp too much on a municipal election. He did particularly well in the Bangladeshi areas of New York, but he did particularly poorly with non-Bangladeshi Asian immigrants, particularly Chinese Americans. The party of highly educated but downwardly mobile elites, they comprise a highly energetic activist base, but that base was supplemented by carefully selected ethnic blocs carved out of the electorate using identity politics as the knife. Why is he talking about globalizing the Intifada? In fact, what the hell does that even mean in Manhattan? Consider a movement that rails against the billionaire class, despite the fact that the billionaire class remains firmly in the quarter of the modern left. A movement that idolizes foreign religions, even as it rejects the teachings of those faiths. It rails, this new modern left, against white people, even as many of its funders and its grassroots activists are privileged whites themselves. How could privileged whites march around with a straight face decrying white privilege? How could progressives pretend to love conservative Muslims despite those Muslims' views on gender and sexuality? What unites Islamists, gender studies majors, socially liberal white urbanites, and big pharma lobbyists? It isn't the ideas of Thomas Jefferson or even of Karl Marx. It's hatred. They hate the people in this room. They hate the President of the United States, and most of all, they hate the people who voted for that President of the United States. The far left doesn't care that BLM led to a spike in violent crime in urban black neighborhoods, and it did, because that same movement also led to anarchy in middle-class white neighborhoods. They do not care that Islamism hates gays and subjugates women, because for now, it's a useful tool of death against Americans. Because in the process, they're destroying the so-called gender binary that has structured social relations between the sexes for the whole of Western civilization. Because they don't mean to create higher living standards for those who are born and raised here, whether they're black, white, or any other skin color. They mean to replace those people with people who will listen to their increasingly bizarre ethnic and religious appeals. A guy who describes the Palestinian cause as central to his identity, yet holds views like abortion on demand or using taxpayer-funded money to fund transgender surgeries for minors. These views, of course, are completely incomprehensible on the streets of Gaza. How can you believe in the cause of the Intifada while also holding views that are completely anathema to those people? And the answer is because he's not building a positive program. Now, Ryan and all of these incredible people asked me to speak on statesmanship. But the most important part of statesmanship is to be for something. Now, this is why the president cares so much about tariffs. We must be willing to penalize those who would build outside of our own nation and who would use the workers of foreign countries over the workers of their own. We are human beings, made in the image of God. Every Western society, as I stand here today, has significant demographic and cultural problems. There is something about Western liberalism that seems almost suicidal, or at least socially parasitic. That's why the demographic trends across the West are so bad. And yet, the institutions that take this incredibly diverse country and form culture are weaker than they have ever been. While our elites tell us that diversity is our greatest strength, they destroy the very institutions that allow us to thrive and build a common sense of purpose and meaning as Americans. Just remember that 4 years ago, we had people promoting alternative national anthems, at one of the few national remaining pastimes that transcended ethnic and cultural differences. We don't want to take this too far. Too many on the far left seem destined to erode the very thing that makes Americans put on a uniform and sacrifice their lives for our common nation. Now, part of the solution, I think the most important part of the solution, is you first got to stop the bleeding. And that's why President Trump's immigration policies are, I believe, the most important part of his successful first 6 months in the Oval Office. It's hard to become neighbors with your fellow citizens when your own government keeps on importing new neighbors every single year at a record number. I think the people whose ancestors fought in the Civil War have a hell of a lot more claim over America than the people who say they don't belong. So I believe one of the most pressing problems for us to face as statesmen is to redefine the meaning of American citizenship in the 21st century, especially from a modern world that's hell-bent on dissolving borders and differences in national character. And if you pay attention, most of the howling about the big, beautiful bill reduces to the fundamental fact that President Trump believes that Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security ought to go to the American people, not to illegal aliens who don't have the right to be here. And when states, and of course we're in one right now, start handing out these benefits to illegal aliens, they cheapen the very meaning of citizenship. Citizenship should mean feeling pride in our heritage, of course. And by the way, when we went to the moon, when we built the great future of the post-war era, we did it with our fellow citizens. And we should reject whether it's Democrat politicians or corporate oligarchs who say that we can only build the future by importing millions and millions of low-wage serfs. The founders of our country understood that perhaps better than anybody. They understood that our shared qualities, our heritage, our values, our manners and customs confer a special and indispensable advantage. We should demand that our people, whether first or 10th generation Americans, have gratitude for this country. Zoran Mamdani's father fled Uganda when the tyrant Idi Amin decided to ethnically cleanse his nation's Indian population. Mamdani's family fled violent racial hatred, only for him to come to this country, a country built by people he never knew, overflowing with generosity to his family, offering a haven from the kind of violent ethnic conflict that is commonplace in world history, but it is not commonplace here. And he dares, on our 249th anniversary, to congratulate it by paying homage to its incompleteness and to its, as he calls it, contradiction. Has he ever looked in the mirror and recognized that he might not be alive were it not for the generosity of a country he dares to insult on its most sacred day? Who the hell does he think that he is? We must get to work. God bless you. Thank you.